getting started, we will also start our live channel on Clubhouse. So give us a second. Excellent. We are live. Welcome everyone. This is our third set of hiring for AI startup as part of the AI Tech Talks. We are Robometrics Machine and Skive. We build machines that feel with focus on working on intersection of AI, healthcare, and aerospace. And today we are covering 3 questions that relates to hiring for our AI startup. Just as my background, I've been in the industry for a very long time, working on artificial intelligence and the business use of that. I also worked at MIT Media Labs, Intel, IBM, and HP. And right now I'm heading Skive Inc. And we are definitely hiring. So the first question is, I have not worked on an AI startup before. Will it be of much use in an AI startup? So in other words, what if I don't have any artificial intelligence experience? Should I still apply for a specific role in an AI startup? And just to qualify, that AI role could be on the business side, could be on the technology side as well. The answer is yes, absolutely. AI is one of those interesting areas where you are in a better position, obviously, if you have an expertise in an area, specifically, let's say, machine learning under AI, or even going further in something like deep learning, where you know how well to build something like a convolutional neural network. No doubt about that. But at the same time, to build a successful AI system, you just don't need expertise on the engineering side, and even on the engineering, not just on the very domain specific, AI domain specific area. You need expertise in a specific vertical as well. For example, if you're building a solution for healthcare, it helps if you know how some of the technology in healthcare works. It also helps if you have understanding on some of the practical consideration, for example, HIPAA, when you're dealing with healthcare records. And thirdly, when we are designing an AI system, you will work with people who have expertise in a certain vertical, so healthcare, aerospace, retail, enterprise software, as well as working with these very specific AI engineers, including data scientists and machine learning engineers. So that's why even if you don't have experience in AI specifically, you can still make a point that, look, I'm trying to join your startup because I have deep expertise in healthcare, which will be useful when you're trying to build better AI models for healthcare. So that was on the technology side. On the business side, it's also important because you're not usually selling artificial intelligence. You're selling a product that includes artificial intelligence. Which that means is that you need to have better understanding of what the target market is. So healthcare, aerospace, retail, data center management. These are just some of the areas. So yes, understanding artificial intelligence works there because you're, after all, selling a product where the core is artificial intelligence. But you're selling to customers with a value that goes beyond artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is just a tool to make the product what it does. So it's probably able to do spam detection much better because now you don't have to have hard-coded rules. That's where having expertise on the marketing or in go-to-market or in business development for some of these verticals come into picture. One thing I do see is that you need to show that you are passionate about that area, and you're also passionate about technology as a whole, because you do need some understanding about artificial intelligence, because after all, you are applying for a startup. Second question, what are some of the soft skills that I can show to make my profile attractive for working in an AI startup? As I mentioned before, in an AI startup, you will more or less work in a cross-functional team. So even in the technology space, you will be working with DevOps engineer, you'll be working data scientists, you'll be working with systems engineer, you'll be working with engineers who have deep expertise in performance and optimization of systems. When you are, and also when you're working on the business or the marketing side, you will need to have understanding on technology. And obviously, if you are not a engineering major, you will need to get that experience either by learning yourself and working collaboratively inside the company. So that's one of the top skills, which is to be able to work across functions or to be able to work in a cross-functional team. It could be from a selling perspective where you are the front-end salesperson or the business development person. It could be on the back end where you're actually working as a product manager or an inbound product manager to build a product. And that's one of the soft skills that's important. The second is learning something really fast. Artificial intelligence is one area which is changing very fast. What is common and most widely used may not be widely used 6 months from now. And that's the pace of artificial intelligence, or at least the innovation of artificial intelligence. And secondly, regulation has been in place on some of these disruptive technologies, including artificial intelligence, advertising, and marketing. And that makes it important that you are a fast learner. You're able to learn something really, really fast. And it doesn't just entail engineering, it also entails the business side of things. Our third question is Silicon Valley AI startup versus the rest of the world. I believe to elaborate on this, what is special about a startup in Silicon Valley specifically focused on AI? Or to some extent, you could even generalize that to any startup in Silicon Valley as opposed to the rest of the world. If you ask Jack Ma, he will say 996. If you ask Elon Musk, he will say 100 hours a week. And that's to some extent a score about when you talk about a Silicon Valley startup. And yes, you could replicate some of these characteristics outside Silicon Valley as well. But most of the time, I have seen this being much more common where people are willing to work really hard in Silicon Valley, where they are willing to spend hundreds of a week to chase their dreams, to chase a passion. This is less prominent outside Silicon Valley, even in the US. That's one. Number two is to think out of the box, and that becomes even more important when you're talking about deep tech or deep technology startup, where you are building a technology which is different from what others have. So when we say an AI startup, it could be that you are using AI just as an enabler, and there is no huge differentiation on the artificial intelligence core that you have versus something else. The second is that you are building a core AI technology that could be used by other businesses, other enterprises. And in both of these, you've got to be thinking out of the box. And to enable this creativity or to enable this out of the box thinking, you need to have the right environment. And it's not a surprise that if the weather is great outside, you will be much more receptive to thinking fresh. You will be much more outside, talking to people, collaborating, and that's a key when we think when we say creative thinking, or when you talk about out of the box thinking. The third thing is the ecosystem when it comes to building a AI startup. AI startup is not just about technology, or it's not about technology that's readily available. Yes, that could be a business model where using few pieces of AI algorithms or AI system that's available off the shelf, but that's a little bit harder to monetize or build a product out of. Because if you could do that, so could 10 other startups, not just in the valley, but outside the valley as well. That's where trying to figure out something interesting about the problem and how you're using AI to solve it, if AI is the right tool or the right technology to solve it. Let's assume that. And based on my experience, what ends up happening is that you come to a point where that technology is not there, or it's 80% there, but that 20% is not there, and you need to think out of the box. You need to be creative. You need to hire more people who have very specific expertise in that area. And that's what, based on my personal experience, Silicon Valley is great in, because you will have that network where you will be able to get that expertise really fast. It could be in healthcare, for example, where you're looking at solving a healthcare problem and you don't have in-house expertise on healthcare. It may make sense to hire a full-time person or a staff member for healthcare, and a lot of the time you won't have that luxury because you may be an early stage startup. And that's what Silicon Valley actually provides to some extent, where you have that network already, or if you don't have that network, you are able to build it very quickly. Yes, that was harder in the last 12 to 18 months because of COVID-19. But I think things are opening up, and we should see that network restarting. And when we say network, there's a difference between meeting somebody in an online virtual conference versus meeting somebody in a bar, or in a school, or in a class, or in college, or in a cafe, or in a physical conference where you're having coffee together. That has been one of the big things about Silicon Valley, and how that creativity comes into picture, which is so important based on my experience for our AI startup. And we have also seen that that creativity has decreased in the last 12 months because everything going virtual. So these are the 3 questions for today. Next week, we will probably jump to a different topic. But if I get more questions about hiring, specifically hiring for a startup, we may do this again. Just a reminder, we are indeed hiring. We are a startup building machines that feel. You can find a lot more about us on LinkedIn, on our Facebook page. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to connect, happy to give advice, and I will see you next week. Bye.